Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. This is Hassan, and in this video we will be analyzing the first round of the Olympiad. And to say it was a crazy round is kind of an understatement. I mean, we literally saw Levon get into a dead loss position and like against an IM from Panama, and somehow he managed to make it work. But that was a real scare for him and Team US. Um, it's been a really crazy round for the top players, but I think they all managed to pull through in some capacity. Also, India did a great job in the first round, I think, just destroying their opponents. But we're on the Pakistan side. And so I would like to analyze our games from as a Pakistani and as just an amateur chess player. We're going to be analyzing if we can actually, like, what is there to analyze here. So I apologize also for the earlier comment in my video. I said we were going to play Hungary, which is incorrect. I made a mistake. I was literally making that video in a rush. We didn't play Hungary. We played Bulgaria, which is, well, I guess it's a bit of a difference because Bulgaria literally have every GM on the board. Like, they have 4 GMs. All of our opponents on the men's side were playing GMs. And from the women's side, we played Colombia. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to analyze the women's game first, and then I'll be analyzing the men's game. And believe it or not, I was in my predictions. I said we were gonna get annihilated, but actually, we actually got a result, which I never thought I would say against a board full of GMs. But one of us actually got something out of that game, and I won't spoil it for you, but you'll probably find out soon enough. So let's get into it. First of all, we have Sheba Shah versus Women's International Rivera in Greece. So we're going to turn the eval bar on, but I prefer not to pay too much attention to the eval bar. So d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3, b6, bishop b4, bishop b7, knight c3, and bishop a6. Bishop a6 is not a line I've ever seen before. I know the engine says it's +1, but I don't understand it at all. The computer just recommends e4, and to be honest, it seems like a very natural move. I don't know why you wouldn't play it, but I don't know, to be honest. I think e4 is a good move, but e3, I guess, to be solid is also fine. Bishop b7, back, bishop e3, h6, h6, bishop h4, short castle. The one thing I don't like about how Sheba is playing this position is that she essentially got herself into this passive King's Indian setup. And when you get yourself into such a passive setup, you need to know what you're doing. You need to have absolute surety that you can play in these complex kind of positions, which against a women's international master rated 2200, when that's like a level Pakistan has rarely ever seen before, it's very doubtful. But okay, we'll go castles. d5. She strikes back now, which I personally like. Rook to c1. c5. Okay, I like these two moves because they show a willingness to fight back. C takes d5, and now e takes d5. A bit of an inaccuracy. I don't really count it as an inaccuracy, to be very honest. I think it's a fine move. Like, it just sort of keeps this center together. Maybe you're planning to push c4 in the future. But d takes c5, c takes c5. Okay. Bishop b1, knight d7, queen d4, sorry, queen d3, queen b6, rook f d1, c4, queen c2, and rook a to b8 is a huge blunder. Why is it a huge blunder? Well, to be very honest, as like appealing as the eval bar may seem, it's actually very hard to make a move. And rook a to b8 is a massive blunder, and Ingrid Rivera finds the tactic almost immediately. Okay, not immediately, but she does play the right move, which is knight to e5. And the point is that the best move is to take, to be very honest. But then after this, you have queen h4, which is just straight up mate. So after knight takes e5, bishop takes f6, you have to go knight d7 blocking. And then you're just down a piece. So just the position is already filled with massive amounts of traps for black, and I guess Sheba thought she was being a little clever with the move rook a to d8. But the problem is this does not solve your problem, because the knight can still be captured, because even though you think the knight protects on f6 from this check, you just take the knight. And now after takes, queen h4, king f1, queen h2, you lose the rook. And yeah, the rest of the game didn't really favor Sheba. Now, to be very honest, I still think she tried the best she could. She got a pawn back. You know, like she tried to create some level of complication, but when you're up a rook, all I can say is you're up a rook. And after the quick queen trade and trying to break through, it just resulted in a whole bunch of nothing. And here, Sheba resigned, and she essentially, we lose our first game of the match, 1-0 to Colombia. To be very honest, the only thing I didn't like about Sheba was that she didn't really use her time. Like if you look at Ingrid, she like used all of her time, but Sheba barely even used 35 minutes. But then again, like she's like 60 years old. I imagine she didn't even think she'd win the nationals. So for me personally, I can understand it. Like she was already lost from like this point on, and like she was already essentially lost after rook a to b8, which she spent like 4 minutes on. So my only advice to Sheba would be to spend more time here. But apart from that, I can't really fault her. She was always going to lose this game, be it slowly or in such a flurry like she did. But just a bad start, but it's just a start. That's what people have to understand. It's just a start. It's nothing. We'll be now looking at the game between I cannot pronounce her name, Valentina. I hope that's the name. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Versus Zenobia Vasif. And this was a game I was actually looking forward to. I thought this would be a very interesting game. So let's see how it goes. E4, C5. Okay. Valentina looking to fight already. And C4 is this very offbeat system. I don't really know what Zenobia was thinking, but we do just get standard development. Knight D8. And okay. F4. Apologies, I've had a really bad cough today. Castles, bishop d7, b4, a6. Now, let me tell you that it's very clear just from this opening that like after this takes knight b8 and bishop h6, even though the valuation says -1, I would actually prefer white's position here. Just because black's pieces are so passive and like there's no real easy way. Maybe h4, h5 might come in the future and might open up the rook. So I would honestly prefer white here, but I think castling was not the right decision. Yes, theoretically you do like get your king to safety, but maybe like all the way back here when she took the knight, maybe she should have like played knight b4. And like if a6, then knight a6, then the option for long castle would always be there for her, and then like she could go h4, h5 and march down the board. This is just what I would have done. I'm not at Olympiad, I'm not on their level, so I don't know what she missed here. And just seem to think it's fine, but I don't know. Like I could be completely wrong. But okay, she chooses this instead, this whole approach of castling while playing f4. And b4, a6, bishop f3, rook c8 and a4. And for a good while, it looks like Zenobia is actually getting an advantage. I really don't care what the engine says. Like, it's -0.5, but to be very honest, it clearly looks like white has a much superior position, and black is the one trying to fight back here, not white. White seems completely fine here. So f takes e4, d takes e4, and rook takes e4. Now d takes e4 was a bit of an inaccuracy, I guess, but like, okay, I can understand it, to be very honest. Like, I think I would have played this just for the simple fact that my two pawns are together. But it does hang c4, so I guess in a way you're losing a pawn no matter what. So I can't really fault her for playing this. This, knight d7, sorry, knight f2, bishop d7, and knight d3, attacking the rook, rook f6, and this is the first mistake of the game, knight b2. To be fair, I think she didn't like her knight's position, that's why she chose to reroute it back, but I think c5, I know like engine suggestions are mostly ridiculous, but I can kind of understand it because if she takes, then all of a sudden your knight actually has a very active square. And now the engine's actually even thinking that, that the black should sacrifice here to maintain some level of play, but that's what I'm trying to say. Like, I would honestly try to move forward instead of trying to go back. But it's a move played in like 3 minutes, so I don't think she was thinking too much. But it's just interesting, to look at these kind of moves. And after bishop e6, rook c8, and I think this is also why the engine wanted her to play c5, because now this pawn's going to be a target. So now queen d7, king h2, rook f8, and queen d3. Again, I would have honestly played c5, but now she's just trying to hang on to this pawn. And g5 here was a stellar move in my opinion. I think this move really shows the level difference, because after g4 you're essentially just like like she plays bishop e2, but now like after g4 I would honestly like this whole idea to open up the king for me is like really nice. Even if it's not the top engine suggestion of the computer, I think it's really dangerous. So I kind of like g5. I really like this move from Valentina. So bishop e2, she plays knight g6, and after trading a few pieces, we get to this position. Let me quickly show you with knight h5. And all I can say was that this game was just a slow and suffocating defeat. Like, she finally now plays like c5, but now it's just too late because black just entirely ignores it, and now your king is completely open. And when you have pieces like this, it's just completely scattered. She tries to go for some complications with c takes, but there's nothing to complicate matters with. It's just queen d7 and sorry, queen f2. The only move you have is block, and then just queen takes f2 is mate. So where do I think she went wrong? Honestly, for me, the critical moment, even like for me, was knight b2. I know I don't really give engine too much suggestions, but I think here she was just playing too passively. She should have been aggressive, because as you'll see with the men's game, they were just trying to play on the position and not really caring for their opponents. Which is what I think you should have done. Because knight b2 just feels like a move you play because your opponent's higher rated and you're desperately trying to hold on to that position. So all of a sudden you're like, oh my god, I must hold on to this position. And like you're desperately trying to play on. But if she just tried to attack instead of defend, then she would have gotten a completely fine position for me. I would have really liked her to play this kind of position. And I personally would like her chances here. We're not going to look at MEHAK's game. I'm going to save that for last on the women's section. Next up, we have Ayat Asmi. She's a young player from Pakistan, extremely talented. I think she has one of the highest potential of all the women's chess in Pakistan. And she's playing Isabella, a 1952. And I'll just say, I think Ayat played a great game here. So we got a Sicilian. She played this kind of bishop b4 early style. And what I can just say overall was that neither player really got an advantage if you look at it. Like, yes, like you can argue, oh wow, she's -1, but it really doesn't feel like that at all. Like, it just feels like a normal game where black has some minuscule advantage, such as like putting some pressure, having like 2-on-1, like an outside passed pawn maybe in the future. But it feels like white's position is just fine. Like, there's no real like problems in it until bishop c4. Bishop c4 is the very beginning of white's problem. Sorry, and you'll begin to understand why very soon. Bishop e6 is played, queen e7. So from this, what I can assume Ayat wanted was to place a piece here on c4, because I think her logic was that, oh well, if she takes me, then I'll just take back with the queen, and I put some sort of pressure on this knight, and it's very difficult for black to make a move. But I wouldn't go too deep into it, but yeah, now the a pawn starts expanding, and I think now all of a sudden, like, you're trying to play on little to no initiative now. Because while black is starting to set up his pieces, like with bishop d7, maybe he'll put the rook on a1 to try to go for this a4 break, white has no real concrete plan. And with knight f1, you don't really help yourself when you have to play moves like knight f1. Bishop d6 is played, and she should have tried to maybe defend aggressively. But for me here, the position was already kind of crumbling. I mean, the engine recommends this, which, yeah, when Yeah, the position already looks kind of bad. You're super passive. Like most of your pieces are literally on the 8th rank. This looks terrible. So, knight takes d3 was played. Queen takes d3. In my honest opinion, I agree with queen takes d3, even if the engine doesn't. And the reason why I agree with it is because if pawn takes d3, you've kind of left yourself with a 2-on-1 here. And the engine is exactly suggesting this, and maybe b4 later. And now there might be serious problems for you with this pawn. So even if like queen takes d3 was an inaccuracy or a mistake, I can understand why he played it. It's not exactly a pleasant position here. So, and I'd sure like to just like leave the queen on here with no real purpose. Would really haunt her, but okay. But I guess the engine's also trying to argue that after this, let's say white tries to play a4 and this. After like b5, you might even have like queen d6 in some lines, which I know the engine doesn't fully prefer, but it's like a way of stopping the pawn at least, and maybe then you could re-coordinate your pieces to try to get this pawn. But okay, queen takes d3 was played, bishop d5, and this just again turns into like what we've seen from the other games. Just a slow suffocation of the position where she's slightly worse, and things just go downhill. Like, she makes another mistake, but by then the game is lost. And yeah, things quickly fall apart. She loses the rook, and then she just gets checkmated. Kudos to her to allow herself to be checkmated, though. This was a sign of respect. I can respect this. But Ayat, I think, played a good game from her level. She tried to hold on. She was never really much better, but simultaneously, I don't think that Black played this the best way. Like, there were a lot of nervy moments, like this. I think she was clever in finding this a5 idea, but um, I wouldn't really know, to be very honest. I think that she played well, but she was just playing too passively. Again, a thing we've seen a lot with this women's team matches that she's playing too passively. She's, I would say, respecting her opponent a little too much, but the position was already kind of worse. And when you look at the rating disparity of like 500 points, you can kind of commend her play because it wasn't just like the other games where she was just worse and then she just crumbled and got destroyed, but she actually fought this game. So I can give her kudos for that. Next up from the women's section, we have women's candidate master MEHAK, former women's champion, extremely strong player, against Jenny Astrid, and I don't even know how to pronounce her name. This game, oh my god, this game was a roller coaster, and that's like being generous. Let's look at it. D4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3, c5, d5. So we're playing a Benoni. Great. And her opponent obviously plays some mainline stuff. And Miha gets herself into trouble very early on. And you'll notice this by just how quickly White just begins to take space. She's playing the same way that Sheba played. Like, if you look at Sheba's game, like Sehba's game from earlier, she just got suffocated. So I think the very similar thing happens, and the only difference is there is no counterplay. The A pawn is completely B pawn, which was her only source of counterplay for the queen side, very quickly neutralized, and things just go from bad to worse because they're equal on time, but White has the clearly superior position. And after kicking the knight back to B8, you just know how bad things are when all your pieces are like this. So e6, f takes e6, d takes e6, knight f8, and this just looks depressing. This is such a depressing position, to be very honest. And now bishop takes b7, she wins a pawn, and now I just expect her to get destroyed. Like, at this point, I was fully ready to be like, bro, we're losing all 4 games, let's just go home. But something amazing starts happening now. She takes the pawn back, and she's down in exchange. That's obvious. But suddenly the position doesn't become so clear. Because, yes, she's down in exchange, but there's a very strong knight planted on e4. And slowly but steadily, progress starts to be made. Bishop f3, sorry, bishop c6. I'm just naming my coordinates all wrong today. Knight takes f6, queen takes f6, rook to g3, rook e8, and now, like, I could tell, like, that this wasn't, like, if you look at the early position, this was like +4. Like, earlier on, this was +4. So, I know it doesn't mean much, but the fact she even got it down to, like, +2, and, like, her opponent was slowly not finding the best ideas, was starting to give me hope. But here's something amazing happened. MEHAK finally got her breakthrough. Rook to g6. You have 10 minutes on the clock. And here MEHAK plays an amazing move. Rook to e2. Sacrificing a full queen, as Gotham would say. But this would actually result in a windmill technique. Check, here, check, here. And I think MEHAK here would just make a draw, to be very honest. Like, I mean, if I were them, I would just make a draw and go home. So, but here, sorry, I moved too fast. I spoiled it. She played rook g4, and now actually MEHAK is winning. Like, before she wasn't, before it was just a draw, but now she's winning if she plays the move h5. But in a tragic turn of events, MEHAK only has a minute and 25 seconds left. And I cannot totally understand not playing h5 here. This looks like a move you have to be 100% sure about. And with a minute on the clock, she goes for, like, the safer alternative, I suppose, which is playing rook e5. And her opponent still gives her a chance, by the way. She can still go back to rook e2 and still try this idea. But she chose to take the pawn, and I guess try to grind it out here. But this is just losing. It's lost. And few moves later, MEHAK just resigns because eventually, as you'll realize later on, the pawn plays too much and she can't stop both pawns. So, yeah, a very heartbreaking game, especially after working so hard, like creating some level of complications, and then just like to have h5 on the table, like then to play rook g6, and then like the engineer is saying sack the queen, which is a very unpractical, but the fact was she was winning. And rook e5 really hurts. But I can understand it. She spent 9 minutes to find rook e2. And after rook g4, finding h5 was near impossible. So that's it for like the women's game. We lost 4-0 to Colombia. Though there were a few bright moments, I can't say I'm surprised. We did everything we could to try to win this game. But now let's move on to the men's game. And this is where we actually somehow pulled off a result. I will never understand how, but we pulled off a result in the men's section. So let's go over the games. First game we will be reviewing is Momin Faizan, who is a young talented player from Pakistan, easily one of the strongest players, versus Petra Mungchil, who is like 25-40. As I said, we're playing Bulgaria, and there are like every board from Bulgaria is a GM, so we're not even going to question that. So e4. And Momin is not the kind of guy to like go easy on anyone. He doesn't care if his opponent's Magnus Carlsen. He'll just play whatever. So he chose to go for Sicilian. Exactly what I expected, to be very honest. His opponent plays the closed Sicilian, and Momin goes into this kind of line with the bishop on g2. Sorry, not g2, sorry, g7. And now it's this very closed battle, but we already start to see Momin's like aggressive intentions with the move b5. I guess trying to play b4 in the future and dislodge this knight. But the knight already goes there. And yes, this claims as an inaccuracy, but I don't really claim it as an inaccuracy. Like it doesn't seem to be any obvious plan here. So I can totally understand taking knight h4, b6. There is one thing I have to notice, which is that this knight's mobility is a little restricted, but it does have like some route back. So I don't like with knight b7 and then knight c5. So I wouldn't be too surprised that Momin didn't really think his knight was that much of a problem. Rook e8, c3, knight b8, as we said, and now knight c5. As I said, this Momin probably thought he was fine here. And to be fair, I don't blame him. But after c4, Momin decided to go queen b8. And Momin played this move in like just a minute. And I can't really understand why. Because in my opinion, taking is just way more natural. And I guess Moment didn't want to let the rook in, but why not this and then queen b8? Yes, it's still losing, but at least then it's like a little justified. Like at least after knight f5, you could argue that maybe taking, like yeah, the pawn is a bit through, but yeah, it's a lost position. But I would at least argue there, like after takes, yeah, bishop b4 is a near unfindable move because okay, like knight takes, pawn takes. Let's see why this is a good move. Apparently, rook d7. I do not understand the Indian's evaluation here. Like, I know it looks equal, but b4 is literally just ready to be played. And now the engine recommends queen d7. So I guess the engine wanted him to like go towards the king. But I guess Mahmoud tried to do it in like a bit of a different way. And things did not work out. I mean, he traded off the bishop after thinking for a bit. But the queen just came in. He desperately, I think, tries to lash out. But it just goes from bad to worse, you know. Bad to worse. And his opponent just sacrifices the rook for the two pieces. Gets a solid position. And in case you're wondering why Mood played d5 here, it's because this was threatening a mate on g2. Sorry, on g7. His opponent was threatening mate on g7. That's why e5 had to block the queen. Bishop f4, king d2, bishop f1, queen d1, and the rest of the game is just Moomin kind of just getting eviscerated. And here he just resigned because his opponent is obviously going to win a game up 3 points of material, and it's just lost. Overall, I commend the fighting spirit, like to try to play c5, like so early on. But in my opinion, it was his game to lose. Like, it was not Moment's game to lose. It was Peskov Momchil's game to lose. In my opinion, if anyone should have taken the risk, it was Momchil because he's the higher rated player. He has to beat Moment. So, for me, playing Sicilian is a bit unnecessary, but I can't deny he did get some promising ideas out of it. Like this whole b5 idea, trying to play b4 and this expansion, it was just that in the critical moment of c5 he didn't take. That's what really led to his downfall. He played too quickly, which tends to be something Moment just has a problem with in general. He just plays too quickly sometimes. He's not a huge fan of classical chess, so I can kind of understand that, but you could just tell like he needs to like slow it down at certain moments. Like you have an hour on the clock. There is no need for you to make this move in like just 1 second. We all know like you could have spent more time here. But I digress. The next game we're playing is against Grigor and Mudassir Iqbal, who is playing with the white pieces. And this game was a full-on disaster class from Mudassir. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but he was never having any chances in this game. Like, never. Like, he never even had a positive evaluation. So, and the reason why I call it a disaster class is because when you play the fantasy against a GM, I just can't help but feel like you're not that serious. Like, I would have appreciated if you had played like the advanced Kara with like bishop f5. Like, then, like, this is a line I play a lot, knight c3, with my opponent playing e6, and then I play bishop d3. I would like respect it if he like played something like this, but like when you play the fantasy, I'm just like, okay, like I can't blame him, but at the same time, I'm just not a huge fan of the fantasy. And yeah, the game very quickly kind of spirals out of control, and as you can very quickly see, within just 9 moves, White already has a damaged structure. Like let's just say after this whole exchange in the center, Queen e2 trying to pin the pawn, knight c6, g takes e5, bishop f5, and knight h3 takes. It's very clear that black is the one who's better because of white's damaged structure and just isolated pawn structure. Plus white's pieces are just nowhere near developed. Black long castles, and I don't understand why piece development here was interpreted. I get f4 as a top engine move, but it really feels to me like he should be developing his pieces. But knight h6 and then b4. And here black could have won the game on the spot. Just simply sacrifice. Because if you take, bishop b4 will straight up win the rook. So you can't really do that. And, okay, I apologize. So knight a3 apparently is the top engine move. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he could just go back here and maintain some solid advantage. But his opponent, I think, played too quickly. I think, yeah, like after this, sorry, I keep misclicking it. This is such a scuffed video, but it's just kind of how I make videos. I don't really have some high-end software. I'm just blabbering on my mouse as I speak. I don't have some kind of script or something. So after b4, his opponent spent very little time, like just 10 seconds, and just decided to retreat the bishop back. Clearly, he had thought of this move already, but now Moomin starts to make some sense of progress. And now all of a sudden the valuation from -2 has completely dropped to almost equal. It's minus zero point 0.5, which I don't really claim as an evaluation. I just think minus zero point 0.5 is a draw. So bishop e2, knight h to f5, c takes e4, which was the big mistake. In hindsight, it feels like a very natural move to play. But the problem is that, in my opinion, at least in what I would have done, I would have played like c4. And yes, I guess Moomin was worried about knight this. But the problem is when you take, you essentially allow all the pieces to come in. And you'll understand very quickly, you just opened up lines for every piece. And the last thing you want to be doing right now, when black's pieces are so active, is giving him activity. And giving him a reason to actually want. Also, this also allows this check, which he blocks, and very, very quickly, like, you know, we start to see, and very nice here. I really like this move here. He could have taken, he really could have, but he didn't want to give Moomin any play, and sorry, not Moomin, he wanted to give Mudassir zero play. And because maybe if he took, like, Mudassir might have some chances, so he's essentially giving Mudassir a lesson on not to open up the position when your opponent has too much pieces. He played king h8, and after that the game was dead. The game was essentially dead, give a check, and Mudassir just lost all his pieces and just proceeded to resign here. I mean, it was a good attempt, like he fought back from a worse position, but this move, in my opinion, this c takes d4, this was not a good move. You should not be opening lines to your opponent in such a delicate position. Even if you had taken with the rook here and allowed Mudassir to castle, I still don't like his position at all. Like, look at how open everything is. So, in a way, he should have kept the position close. Even if it wasn't the top engine choice, I personally would have played c4. That's what I would have done. I would have played c4. Even if I got into this sort of check, at least now knight b2 is now actually a good choice. And yeah, I would just try to play this position. So that's it. But now we're moving on to the national champion himself, Mahfaz Khalid from Pakistan, up against a 2600. I'm not gonna lie to you, I thought Mahfaz was gonna get smoked in this game. I was convinced this game was gonna end in 25-30 moves. But we actually got an incredibly interesting game. So let's get into it. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b4. Okay, I keep forgetting this opening, man. It's the Roy Lopez. It's the Roy Lopez. And here Mahfaz shocked me by going for the Berlin. And when you go for the Berlin here, I honestly partially expected him to just go into the Berlin endgame. I expected Ivan to just go into the Berlin endgame. But he plays like this another way, where he just like kind of just plays like the Berlin system. And all of a sudden, I was actually starting to feel very confident in Mahfaz's plan here. I felt like his queenside expansion was completely justified. And I felt like, why did it really have any opportunity to strike in the center? So, h5, b5. And what I just keep noticing is, Mahfaz is just continuously pressuring this guy. Yes, he gets doubled pawns, but now he can actually strike with e4 in the future. Knight f5, queen e7, rook e8, sorry, rook e1, queen e8, and now queen h5, bishop d6, and for a moment Mahfaz has actually gained a very tiny advantage. It's only 0.3, so it's essentially still a draw. But it's a very tiny advantage, and for a moment I was actually very confident in his position. Queen g6, and the more I just looked at his position, the more confident I was becoming, because I was like, okay, he's putting pressure down on the f-file. White is now just retreating all of his pieces, and look at the time usage. Mahfaz is at 40 minutes. So far, I was actually feeling very confident. I was actually like, there's maybe even a chance that Mahfaz could draw or even win the game, because his opponent is just not spending his time that well. And but if you know anything now, it's that the engine evaluations now start to become almost unfindable for a normal human being. And unfortunately, that's what happens as we get to see the critical moment very soon. As Mafaz just sort of brings his pieces back, which I don't really understand. He plays e4, and he plays this, and after e takes, he plays rook b3, which is a blunder. But in my opinion, the blunder started way before that. In my opinion, here after rook b2, Mafaz had a dominant position, but he just sort of kept his pieces back. In my opinion, like he, I guess knight before I guess was a bit justified, but he should have stopped trying to strike and move forward, even if it like meant like this. I know like then the engine evaluations kind of become tedious, but I guess like here I would have like played this. Let's just play like some line here, here, and just for anyone wondering, why can't you take this pawn? It's because it would allow queen takes knight check, this, 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 and for a brief moment you think you're up a pawn, but you're actually not up a pawn. And I'd argue if anyone's winning this, oh my god, I'm so sorry. I was in the middle of showing a line, and I'd argue in this position, after takes, due to your double isolated pawns and black's pretty good like clump of pawns, if anyone's playing for a win here, it's 100% black. So I guess that's why rook b3 was a good move. But in my opinion, just allowing e4 and pushing all his pieces back, I guess this sort of sacrifice was kind of also a bit risky. But rook b3 was a real mistake. And people will be like, why is that a mistake? Because some beginner players will say, well, if you take here, I'll go here and I'm just attacking the queen. Which maybe Mafaz moved into that beginner mindset and was like, yeah, but here there's a zugzwang, an in-between move. I don't know if they call it zugzwang now. I'm a bit bad on chess terminology. But now queen takes e4 check. And now it's very clear that black earlier on like had this huge clump of center, but now it's starting to come back to haunt him. And leaving his king so wide open, and now knight f8, and after queen f7, Mafaz did not even bother playing, he just resigned. Which I can kind of respect, because in my opinion, Mafaz really did try his best here. He held an equal position against a 2600 for so long. Like, it's almost ridiculous. Like, he held it like for almost a good like 27, 28 moves. Like yeah, until like move 30, the position was completely fine. He only started encountering problems after, I would say, after move 26, he started encountering some problems. But even then, he was navigating fine. It was really only rook b3 which he played. And to be fair, he was trying to keep up on time, but it's just a sort of move you play on impulse. And like when all the other options were like already kind of slightly worse for him, I don't blame him. Though I guess knight b4 was a good move. I'm sure he might have seen it. He might have seen knight b4, but maybe he didn't like something about it. Maybe he just felt as if maybe he couldn't defend this pawn, and he felt like even if he could get the passed pawn, this pawn would be too valuable. Though ironically enough, that's a blunder because that allows this. I don't know, but I'm certain that maybe he saw knight b4. I'm pretty convinced he saw knight b4, but just maybe I think he saw something with rook b3 and just miscalculated. Maybe he just missed the fact the queen sees the pawn. Maybe that was it. Because I think here, like he spent like 4 minutes, and I think here he just realized, oh wait, the queen could take the pawn, and it's check. I messed up here. Yeah, I think here he started to realize that. So, good game. But now we move on to the only game where we've had a result. And I can't believe I'm saying this. We actually got a result against a GM. FIDE Master AMER Karim, a veteran of the game. One of the best players Pakistan has seen, at least in its entire history. Has played against Petrov Martin, a 24-year-old GM, rated 25-36. Let's see how this goes. D4 from AMER, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, g6, g3, bishop b4, bishop d7, bishop d2, bishop g2. I love this setup. this setup that AMER has played here is world class. He is playing the Catalan, and if you don't know what the Catalan is, it's pretty much the most boring opening in chess. And it's like an opening for top level players. And if you're under 2000, I wouldn't recommend you play it because it's so complicated. Like I once met a 1900 and he played this whole opening against me. But yeah, he did not get a favorable position. The whole idea is that you essentially let go of the c pawn and you try to counter it with activity. So after c6, knight c3, AMER just develops his pieces and plays knight e4, which in my opinion, I was not really fan of a knight e4. I thought he should have just let the pawn go, but and like maybe played something like queen b6 or a4. I think queen a4 is slightly worse for him. Indian says it's fine, but I don't like it too much. But I was not really a huge fan. I was like, why is he getting so confrontational? But he played e4, and another thing I really like about this is the time usage. AMER just brought his pieces, and what you notice about these games is that unlike some of the other games where they try to instigate fights and they're trying to win the games, AMER sir isn't trying to win at all. Like you can just tell he's just playing very natural moves, and you can just tell like this is just a boring game. But it's how you should play against these GMs, especially when you're the underrated player, and you know a draw will always benefit you. That's why I personally said I don't like Moment's decision of playing Sicilian. I don't like it because your opponent has to win anyway. So you might as well play something super solid and catch him off guard. I understand why he did it, don't get me wrong, but it's just that when you play stuff like this, you are much less likely to lose. And that's exactly what happens. And we see here there's a lot of shuffling, a lot of trading pieces, and here for like a brief second, like here, I was actually really worried because he had lost his pawn. AMER had willingly given up this pawn, and I guess what he thought was that, oh yeah, well, I can win this pawn back. But I was actually really concerned about this past a pawn. I was not sure if AMER could handle this because in his last few tournaments, like especially, I've seen him create a lot of chaos with that past pawn. And I was wondering, like, if AMER could actually win this game. So when, like, after takes, I was really like, oh my god, we're going to lose this game too. We're going to go 4-0 down to Bulgaria. Like, not like I didn't expect it, but I was just like, oh my god, he was holding the game so well. But to my absolute shock, his opponent played king d7. And after a3, the position is completely solidified. And his opponent, of course, is like desperate to win, so he's trying to find some way to win this game. But after a very clear scuffle, it's just clear this is a draw. And in my opinion, this is the way how you play against GMs. You don't play some super crazy, expected like some chaos because they outcalculate you in that kind of stuff. The best way to get a result against a GM is to just play something really solid and really boring. And worst case scenario, the GM follows you like it does in this game. Like the GM just decided to agree with him, and they just agreed to a draw and went home. But sometimes, that rare 1 out of 10, the GM is not happy with a draw and will push for a win in a position even when there is no win. So, in my opinion, AMER sir played this exactly the way he was supposed to, an older player against a younger player. He simply created a dead draw position, played mostly on this theory, and just played a bunch of nothing moves and just drew the game. I wonder if Team Pakistan talked about this beforehand, and that's why Mafaz and Momin played the way they did. I wonder if they had this sort of discussion in the like dressing room, like in like football where they go in like half time, and they're like, "Listen, guys, this is the plan." I wonder if they just told AMER sir, "Listen, just draw your game, and Mafaz and Momin will try to win theirs, and Mudassir, you can just go and try to." Get a draw in that game. I wonder if they told them that was the game plan, because it certainly felt like that. It certainly felt like Mudassir and AMER were just playing for a draw, and Momin and Mafaz were just playing for the win. That's how it felt like. But here's my overall summary of this entire game. I overall really like this performance from Team Pakistan because even though we lost 3.5 to half from the men's side and like 4-0 to the women's, I don't doubt that the players care. I don't doubt that the players cared here. it was very obvious from the way they played and their intentions and their like desire to create complications in some games, and some games like where they were really pushing, that they really did want to win. It was just that they were just outplayed. There are levels to this. Like we were 2000 and they were 2500s. There are just levels to this. But I respect their willingness to play on and their actual desire to create complications. Oh my god, my hair is such a mess. I just noticed that now while oning my camera. But I respect the desire to play on, and it clearly shows that. Like Momin playing the Sicilian clearly showed that he wanted to win that game. So I don't doubt if these players care. Like before, like when we went to Chennai and that whole disaster class happened where we just aborted the game for whatever god forsaken reason, I was really questioning whether the players even cared. I was questioning that. But these group of players, the way they played today, I have no doubt in my mind. The federation, these players care. Please send them to more international tournaments because they 100% care. It's shown every day in the way they play, in the way they're acting, in the way they are consistently trying to get the win. The way Mafaz played today, very well done. The way Mudassir was hanging on, even in that dead loss position, he was trying to hang on. And the way AMER drew today, it showed that they care. They can get upsets. This team is not 2000. It can get big upsets. And in case anyone's like curious, AMER gained like 8 rating from this match. And Petro Martin lost 4. And like everyone else essentially just lost 4 to 2 rating points. And I apologize for showing that. So yeah, that's essentially it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please leave a like, subscribe if you're new. Please let me know whether you agree with my overall analysis. We'll be playing Qatar next. Mafaz will be playing against a 23-40 IM, so it's a chance to get back to winning ways. And the rest of the team is like 17-1800. So I expect to win from Team Pakistan, but if we draw, so be it. But what I want to see the most is the players caring and the players fighting for the team. That's what I want to see. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.